Hello. In today's video I'm going to be making this Seaside View card. It is a easel card and it stands up like this, and you can write your sentiment in the inside at the top. So it's watercolor, and these are the items we'll be using. The Seaside View stamp set. We'll be using the chair on the sand, the trees, and the birds, and hope you have a relaxing day. I'm using some old dies. I'm going to be using this die here from the old Project of Life Cards and Labels dies, and the Seaside embossing folder. I'll be using Soft Sky, Coastal Cabana, and Sahara Sand. On some of the cards, on this card I used Bermuda Bay. But today I am using Coastal Cabana. So let's get started. So it's really simple. I've already started my card. I wanted to show you a little bit about coloring, watercoloring the sand and the ocean and the sky around your design. And I didn't finish the chair yet, so I'm going to go ahead and sit down and start coloring now, and just to give you an idea of how I do it. I'm using markers for this. This is Coastal Cabana. I've already colored the glass of drink with Flirty Flamingo and a little pineapple punch for the lemon, and so that part is done. I'm going to be using the Soft Sky ink pad, and you can use the Coastal Cabana for the chair. I was using the the marker, and we'll be using Sahara Sand for the sand under the chair. So I have those handy here. You can also do them with marker if you prefer, but I find it best to use the ink pads for bigger areas. So for the chair, I was using the Coastal Cabana, and I have a watercolor brush here. And first I color the parts of the wood where I'm going to put the marker, and then just color over it. And if you want it darker than this, then you would just color it without putting water on it. But to give it the more watercolor look or watercolor effect, you can put water on it. So it's just a simple way when you have small things to paint, especially the leaves in the trees, is just to use the marker to color them in. But you might want to get them wet first, or go ahead and put some marker down and then wet it a little bit with some water, and it gives it the watercolor look. You can tell the difference here. Of course, these are different colors, but I need some more water on the back of the chair, so I'll just go and fill that in with the water in the brush. You can also do your shading with your markers. So either before or after you put water on it, you can do both. Okay, so you get the idea. You get the idea on that. So to do the, well, let's do the sky. So to do the sky, I'll give you a list of all of the marker colors that I used and the ink pads. So to do the sky, I'm going to open the Soft Sky ink, and I'm going to use my watercolor marker. Let me get a paper towel here to some of the paint off of or the ink off of the marker, the pen. And I'm going to get this kind of wet, And then I'm just going to lightly kind of go around where I want the sky, and it's very light. It doesn't have to be very dark. So by going over and over it a little while the paint is wet, or the ink is wet, it lightens it up. And if you wanted, you could leave spaces that look like clouds. This is just a soft watercolor, so you really don't need to be too fussy with it. You don't want to get too much of the brush on the green, or it'll pull it out into your sky, or the brown from the trees. And so it's much easier to color these with a pen, with a marker, sorry, than it is really with a watercolor brush. But this is a tiny tipped watercolor brush, so it's not too difficult. And I prefer this if I'm going around things like this to make the sky or the sand. A smaller brush seems to work well for me. A larger brush would spread too much of the water around the paper. And this one is a little bit more controllable than some of the others that seem to leak just a little bit too much water. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of leave it at that. And I'm going to switch to the sand. Well, I'll tell you, let's see. Let's make the ocean kind of Coastal Cabana, since that's our main chair color. And I'm just going to allocate some of this down around the bottom to be the water. So really don't have to color the whole thing because it's going to be covered up with the frame. So we don't need a lot. Let's see. We probably need, maybe have our water be coming in here, just footsteps away from the edge of the water. Just take a little line above that. Okay, so that's all you need for the water. And then for the sand, I'm using Sahara sand. And let's see. So I'm going to kind of wet this area first. I want to stay away from where this is wet. But I'm going to go up here where this is already dry. Add a little water and then move the paint or the ink around so it's not all one solid color. Okay, and then add a little more water to the paper. Don't want to over wet it. So if you get too much water, just move your water over on the paper. And I'm going to kind of stop right there to make that the sand line. All right, then pick up your paint, ink, whatever medium you're using. Make it a little darker underneath the chair where the shade would be, around the edges. But just drop that ink into the area and move it around with the brush. Okay. Okay, so you get the idea of where we're going with that. Okay. Then check it to be sure that you're going to cover all of the spots that are not painted. I'm going to go ahead and move this blue up a little bit more to the sand line. Okay, so it's pretty simple. You can make it lighter or darker if you want, just by the amount of water that you're adding. A little blop there. Okay, so you would set that aside to dry. So let's set it aside to dry while we're working on the rest of the card. And so this, the front of the card has been embossed with the Seaside embossing folder, and then folded in half, because this is going to stand up to be your easel. So let's go ahead and put the inside of the card together so that that's ready when this is dry. So I'm going to take this piece of Coastal Cabana. I'll give you all the measurements in the instructions, and I'm going to glue it with a frame around it, basically, right down here. Just like that. Okay, and then I'm going to take the sentiment that I've cut, that I've die cut out, and I'm going to glue it to the top of this piece of crumb cake. Is this crumb cake or Sahara sand? I think it's Sahara sand. Or, yeah, I think it's Sahara sand. And try to get that centered. Looks about right. And I'm going to put this on with dimensionals to catch the edge of the easel to hold it up. So I'm going to put one in each corner. And you can put strips if you have strips. And I'm going to put two in the center too, because I really want this to not mush down when you put it in an envelope, so it doesn't get smashed. Okay, so remove the backing. And you're going to, the placement is about in the center of here. So I'm going to kind of guesstimate here. This is about the center. Make sure you've got it straight before you press it down. Okay, so that's that part. Now let's work on the decorative part for the front. This is about 2 1/8 inches here, and this is about, this is centimeters. I'm not very good at that, so I think it's 2 inches. This is 2 inches by 4 1/4. And we're going to center this on this piece here. So let's do that. And remember, there's ridges here, so you want to get enough glue on the back of this for it to catch on the ridges to keep it glued down. So I think that's probably about centered. Check your edges. So that goes on there. And then you're going to take this piece and you're going to put it right in the center of the card. But you're only going to glue it on the bottom part of the card. So you're only going to glue it down here. So let me get this about where I want it. So I'm going to say, take your glue and put it just in this area on the bottom of the card. So, right in here. And you can glue it up here as well. Just put a little strip of glue there. And then we're going to measure this out visually and kind of frame it with the blue piece, and then make sure it's straight. Okay, and I'm going to put my block on there to hold it down so that it glues. And on the envelope I've also put the trees and some birds, and you can color that in or just leave it like that. Okay, now before we put, all right, I've already made a mistake. Before we put this down, we needed to we needed to put the string on. So I'm going to take it back up very carefully, because I can glue it back down. And I'm going to put this together and put it on here, and then wrap the twine. It's not twine, it's linen thread. Get the right terms here. Okay, so let's go ahead and frame our picture before we get back to that. Bloopers happen. Okay, so I'm going to put the glue on the frame. And this is an old Stampin' Up die that I have, picture frame die. I've always liked it, so I didn't have the heart to part with it. Okay, so I'm just going to put this at the top of the paper, like that. And I see that it's a little bit long, so I'm going to want to cut that off. Let me, before I do that, see, I don't have it quite straight, so I'm going to move it over a little bit. There we go. Okay. So let me take my block and set it on there for a minute. Have my twine. Okay, so we're going to adhere this to this piece, and since I already have glue on this side, I'm just going to flip it over. And that'll cover where the glue is, so, well, first I better cut it off, sorry. So, see how I have this strip down here? Get some scissors. I'm going to get my long scissors. And you could do this on your paper cutter, but I'm just going to do it with my long scissors. That works. It was just a little strip too long. And I think it's still just a little too long, so I'm going to cut off just another strip there. The other thing that you could do is you could take a sponge and rub some early espresso ink down there so that you don't see it in the background, but it's not too bad. So fit it together before you put your card together to make sure that it's not too long. Actually, even before you paint your design, because it does bother me a little bit that it's, I think it's that this frame is flaking off at the bottom, but okay, I'm going to get some early espresso. Excuse me just a second. Not that it has to be perfect. But I don't like the white edge there. So I'm going to take my marker, my early espresso marker, and I'm just going to run it along the edge here. There we go. I'm going to do the same thing over here. So, like I said, before you start putting things together, make sure that the background fits. Okay, so that solved the problem. So now let's put this together. I'm going to glue this to this piece here. I'm just going to center it. Okay, and once again, I'm going to use my block. Okay, doesn't take very long for the glue to set. And now I'm going to take my twine and I'm going to leave about 5 or 6 inches over here. I'm going to wrap it around 3 times. 1, 2, well, don't have enough. Okay, so a little smaller. Must have made this one longer. So just leave enough to tie a bow. 1, 2, 3. Well, and I still don't have enough. Okay. I better check my measurements on that. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap it around 3 times and use some tape and then tie a separate bow. Improvise. Improvise, improvise. Okay, so I want this to be about in the center of this brown frame at the bottom. So I'm going to put a piece of tape here and I'm going to wrap it around 3 times, 2 and 3, and put a piece of tape here. And then cut this off, turn it over, put it through here, and tie a bow. Okay, so about there. It's going to be a short bow. Okay, that'll work. All right, and then we're going to attach it to the front of the card. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and put my I'm going to put the little jewels on. I have them right here. These are from the whale. I think it's whale done. I don't know the name of them, but that's the bundle they were from. So I'm just going to put a dab of glue down where I want each one. And then I'm going to take this little pick tool and I'm going to place them. Right down like that. I'm going to go ahead and put this on again for a second. Okay, and now we're going to glue it to the front of the card. So once again, I'm going to put my glue just right here. And along the top. And then center the card. Put it down. Test it. And there we have a completed card. Okay, so there's my card for today. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you enjoy making this project.